Way before Nigeria had Instagram influencers and reality TV celebrities, there was one man who ruled the headlines, not for fashion, but for fear. His name, Dr. Ishola Oyenusi.
That's right, the doctor who didn't cure diseases, unless you count curing people of their cars, cash, and sometimes their lives.
Get out of the car now, or I'll shoot.
Please, take the car. Just don't
Ah,
hurt us.
yes, the so called Robin Hood of Lagos. If Robin Hood wore sunglasses, robbed banks, and never gave anyone anything.
Except trauma, he gave plenty of that.
In this series, we'll take you deep into the rise and fall of Nigeria's first notorious armed robber.
From car thefts to shootouts. And yes, that infamous execution at Bar Beach. Don't worry, I'll keep the body count. Because math is my specialty.
And I will try to keep this AI from turning it into a horror comedy.
Headed in, no promises.
So grab your popcorn or your holy water and let's dive into the real life crime story of Dr. Ishola Oyenusi, Bewiri, Holy, Ofon, Alokolonkigbe, Firindioke, Jaguda.
All these names for one person. What a legend. A lunatic. Or just Lagos being Lagos. Let's find out.
Now impatient, they make thief begin do contribution. Because after everybody contributes, now his father go pack everything.
In the sweltering streets of Lagos, in the late 1960s, fear whispered through marketplaces and echoed down alleys. Traders locked their shops early. Drivers looked over their shoulders. Bank managers prayed no black Mercedes would pull up. And the name on every trembling lip, Dr. Ishola Oyenusi. But how did a boy from the heart of Nigeria become one of the most feared men in the country? This is the chilling story of Ishola Oyenusi, a man whose hunger for wealth and power would drive him into the annals of Nigerian criminal history. In this first part, we explore the origins of Nigeria's first celebrity armed robber, from his early life to his rise in the criminal underworld. Not much is documented about the early childhood of Ishola Oyenusi, and that mystery alone feeds into the legend. What we do know is that he was born sometime in the 1940s or early 1950s. Accounts suggest he was raised in southwestern Nigeria, possibly in Lagos or one of its nearby towns. He was not born into wealth. In fact, the story often told is that he grew up in poverty. From a young age, Oyenusi showed signs of restlessness. He was intelligent, confident, and charismatic, but deeply impatient. He wanted the world and he wanted it fast. There are conflicting stories about his education. Some claim he had little to no schooling. Others say he was brilliant, but lacked the means to continue. Oyenusi would later claim to be a medical doctor, earning him the title Doctor. But this was a lie, a self-bestowed honor to make him appear educated, respected, and above the law. The first confirmed crime committed by Ishola Oyenusi was deeply personal. According to reports, he stole a car at gunpoint to impress a girlfriend who had mocked him for being broke. It was not just an act of desperation, but one driven by wounded pride and ego. And that one act lit a fire. The robbery was successful. He sold the car for a large sum of money, and the rush was unlike anything he had ever felt. That single incident turned into a pattern, and in post-Civil War Nigeria, where law enforcement was stretched thin and society was struggling to rebuild, he found the perfect environment to thrive. By the early 1970s, Oyenusi was no longer acting alone. He had formed a gang of loyal criminals, most of whom were former soldiers and hardened street boys who respected only two things: money and violence. Their strategy was simple but deadly: strike hard, strike fast, and vanish. They began hitting banks, factories, and government offices. Lagos became their playground and their battlefield. During this time, armed robberies were rare and shocking, so every act committed by Oyenusi and his gang sent ripples of fear through the city. He became known for his charm and arrogance, always dressed sharply, often in suits or well-ironed traditional wear, and wearing dark sunglasses even at night. He would boast that no bullet could kill him. People began to believe he was using juju, traditional charms that made him bulletproof. He became a legend, not just a criminal. Lagos in the early 1970s was changing. The scars of civil war still lingered, and the city was growing faster than it could manage. Corruption was rife, and public infrastructure was struggling. Amid this chaos, Oyenusi's name became synonymous with terror. Newspapers ran headlines of daring daylight robberies. People whispered about him in markets and homes. It was said that he once walked into a crowded factory, shot a security guard in the head, and walked out with hundreds of thousands of naira, never looking back. Police officers were terrified. Many of them were underpaid, poorly trained, and lacking proper weapons. Some even collaborated with the gang out of fear or greed. What made Oyenusi different from other robbers was not just his brutality, but his ego. He once told a reporter, "I rob because I am poor, and I hate being poor." He believed he was untouchable. He started appearing in local newspapers. He gave statements from jail before his final sentencing, smiling, posing, always in sunglasses. Even during interrogations, he laughed and bragged. But every empire built on blood eventually falls. One robbery would change everything. In 1971, Oyenusi and his gang attempted to rob a large factory. Things went wrong. A police constable was killed. Witnesses saw the robbers flee. But this time, the public was enraged. A city already pushed to its limit demanded action. A nationwide manhunt was launched. With pressure from the military regime, police units received support, and informants started to speak. The myth of Oyenusi's invincibility began to crack. Soon, one of his gang members was captured. Under heavy interrogation, he gave the police everything: names, locations, hideouts. The legend was about to fall. We'll uncover how Oyenusi's brutal heists shocked a nation, how betrayal within his circle led to his arrest, and how the trial of Nigeria's most feared armed robber gripped the country. Subscribe and stay tuned. This is the true story of a man who challenged the system and paid the ultimate price. It was a humid afternoon in 1971 when Oyenusi and his gang stormed a large industrial factory on the outskirts of Lagos. The air was heavy, thick with tension. Workers barely had time to react before shots rang out. In a matter of minutes, the gang had killed a police constable, overpowered security, and escaped with a massive sum of cash. But this wasn't just another heist. This time, they'd crossed a line. The constable killed was not just any officer. He was the brother-in-law of a high-ranking military official. The crime wasn't just a robbery. It was now a matter of national disgrace and personal vendetta. The regime's tolerance had reached its limit. The death of the officer triggered an unprecedented manhunt. Radio and newspaper alerts carried descriptions of Oyenusi and his gang. For the first time, the Nigerian government mobilized special units with better weapons and stricter orders. Capture Oyenusi, dead or alive. Roadblocks sprang up across Lagos. Tip lines were flooded with calls. Oyenusi's allies began to scatter. Some fled Lagos entirely, while others went underground. But with the pressure mounting, cracks started to appear. The first major break came when a mid-level gang member named Musa was arrested at a checkpoint. Desperate to save himself, he began to talk. Musa's confession was explosive. He revealed hideouts, names of fellow gang members, and detailed the planning of previous robberies. He confirmed that Oyenusi was the mastermind and that he had grown increasingly paranoid and reckless. He also spoke of internal tensions. According to Musa, Oyenusi no longer trusted his gang fully. He had become obsessed with wealth, even hoarding loot from his own men. Some had begun to talk behind his back. Others were quietly planning to leave, but it was too late. The security forces acted swiftly. In a coordinated series of raids, several gang members were arrested. A few resisted and were killed on the spot. Meanwhile, intelligence reports suggested Oyenusi was hiding in a rented apartment in Surulere, Lagos. The final operation was swift. In the early hours of the morning, armed officers surrounded the building. Neighbors were ordered indoors. With little warning, they stormed the apartment. Oyenusi, dressed in a wrapper and shirt, tried to escape through the back, but he was captured within minutes. He had no weapons on him, no bodyguards, no magical charms, just fear. As the police paraded him before journalists, the country saw something new. A broken man. His legendary sunglasses were gone. The confident smirk was replaced by a grim stare. Still, he tried to act unfazed. "I will come back," he whispered, as if daring the system to kill him. Oyenusi's arrest shocked the country. Some celebrated. Others were in disbelief. How could the man who once held Lagos in his grip fall so suddenly? The newspapers had a field day. Headlines screamed, "Oyenusi captured," and "Doctor of Death behind bars." For days, the city was abuzz with rumors that he cried during questioning, that he begged for mercy, that he sold out his own allies. His trial began just weeks later. Courtrooms overflowed with reporters and spectators. The military government ensured the trial was open to the public. They wanted the world to see justice. Oyenusi faced multiple charges: armed robbery, murder, conspiracy, and unlawful possession of firearms. The prosecution presented witnesses, including Musa, who testified in detail about their crimes. The defense had little to work with. Oyenusi's charisma failed to sway the judge or jury. Even his famed composure cracked at times. He looked tired, old, defeated. The verdict was unanimous: guilty on all counts. Sentencing was swift: death by firing squad. Oyenusi was moved to the maximum security section of Kirikiri prison. For weeks, he waited. His family visited a few times. Some pastors came to pray with him. He reportedly refused to confess to the crimes, but did express regret about being poor. He was no longer the kingpin, no longer the legend, just another man awaiting execution. But even in death, Oyenusi would not go quietly. September 8th, 1971. The city of Lagos awoke with heavy anticipation. It wasn't just another morning. Today, one of the most feared men in Nigeria's history would meet his end. At Bar Beach, preparations had been made for a public execution. One meant not only to punish, but to make an example. Thousands of Nigerians began to gather at the site before sunrise. Some brought mats and snacks, others carried radios to listen to commentary. It felt like a carnival. Only this time, the main act was death itself. Soldiers stood guard with rifles. Loudspeakers were set up. A wooden stage had been erected near the shoreline, with thick wooden stakes driven into the sand. Among the condemned were Ishola Oyenusi and 6 members of his gang. At Kirikiri Maximum Prison, the morning was tense. Oyenusi barely touched his last meal. He refused to speak much. When the guards arrived, he insisted on one thing: that he be allowed to wear his signature dark sunglasses. He was dressed in a simple shirt and trousers, his wrists shackled. He walked slowly, guarded by heavily armed soldiers. On his way out, he reportedly muttered, "I am not afraid. I am only going home." The prison van arrived at Bar Beach around 9 a.m. The crowd surged forward but was pushed back by soldiers. Reporters took photos. Some people shouted insults. Others, surprisingly, cried. Despite his crimes, many still saw Oyenusi as a tragic symbol of what poverty and neglect could breed. The sun was high and blinding when the condemned men were tied to the stakes. Their names were read aloud. Each man had a sign around his neck showing his crimes: armed robbery, murder, conspiracy. Oyenusi stood at the center. He was still wearing his sunglasses. A firing squad of soldiers took their positions, rifles raised. The crowd hushed, then came the command: "Fire!" Gunshots cracked through the air. The men slumped. Oyenusi was the last to die, wounded but not instantly killed. A final shot was fired at close range. The crowd erupted, some in cheers, others in stunned silence. Justice had been served, but the memory of what had just happened would haunt many for years. News of the execution spread like wildfire. Photos of the moment appeared on front pages the next day. Radio stations replayed the events, and Oyenusi's name was once again on every lip. The government praised the execution as a message to all criminals. Armed robbery would no longer be tolerated, but behind the scenes, debates raged. Was it enough to kill the man without addressing the roots of his rise? Oyenusi had become more than a criminal. He was a symbol, a product of a broken society. His story forced Nigeria to confront uncomfortable truths: poverty, corruption, injustice, and the fragility of hope. In the years that followed, Oyenusi's story entered popular culture. His life inspired books, films, and songs. He was remembered in different ways. Some called him a monster, others a misunderstood rebel. In Nollywood movies, he was portrayed with flair and drama. Markets sold photos of him tied to the stake. His sunglasses became an icon of crime and defiance. But beneath the legend lay a painful truth. Oyenusi's path was paved with blood, fear, and broken lives. Families mourned the people he killed. Victims never forgot. And yet, for many young Nigerians growing up in poverty, his story remained strangely captivating. He had taken what he wanted. He had lived like a king, even if only for a short while. Today, decades later, Oyenusi's name still evokes strong reactions. Some see him as a warning, others a reflection of what happens when society abandons its youth. But no matter how you view him, one fact remains: Ishola Oyenusi left a mark on Nigeria that time has not erased. He showed that terror can wear a smile, that evil can be charming, and that every man, no matter how powerful, will one day face his judgment. After Oyenusi's execution, Nigeria began a more aggressive crackdown on violent crime. More public executions followed, The military government pushed for reforms in law enforcement, but the roots of Nigeria's struggles, poverty, inequality, corruption, remained. And so, while Oyenusi, the man is long gone, Oyenusi, the symbol, endures. A reminder, a warning, a ghost. This was the true story of Dr. Ishola Oyenusi, Nigeria's first notorious armed robber. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, comment and subscribe for more true crime stories from Africa and beyond.